Hello, it's Wednesday, so it is time for another Business Analysis Live. My name is Susan Moore. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at IIBA, and boy, do we have a fantastic topic for you today. And I am really honored and excited to have a guest co host for today. So I want to bring out the Brazilian BA, Fabricio Laguna.
It's a pleasure to be here, Susan.
There it is.
That's my theme song. Oh, such a pleasure to be with you, Susan. Such an honor to represent IIBA being at the BA Live.
Yeah, and you are not just someone who's a familiar face on the conference circuit, and you've got your own podcast. You're also my work colleague, so that is fantastic. So today I bring you on as a work colleague and somebody that knows a lot about this topic today. So today we're talking about driving behaviors for business success. Tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about how we came up with this topic because actually this is through a connection that you have and some speaking that you've done.
Yes, this is a connection with the World Management Agility Forum. So this is a very nice event or a very nice conference which happens every year in Lisbon. And we have connected with the managers of this conference. I have spoken there last year,
Mhm.
and I'm going to speak there again this year in just a couple of weeks in September. And there's something interesting about this conference. It by the years, as I see, let's talk with the managers about that, but they're very shaping their focus on management
Oh,
and on behaviors, right? Or in what I like to call a mindset, as you know, right?
yes.
So, and I see a very close connection between business analysis and management because when you speak about management, there are some management to do the things the way they should be, right? So execution, and there is another component of management that is change. So change the things so things can be better or can get better outcomes. And that's where business analysts get into. IIBA is sponsoring this conference for, I
Mm,
believe, the third year in, consecutive. So there's a huge relationship that I would like to clarify today with our guests talking about management, business analysis, and behaviors, those underlying competences that we have in the BA book guide that serves us very well.
yeah, exactly. Well, let's bring on our guests for today. So we have Hugo Lourenco and we also have Gonçalo Pereira. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Good to be here. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Fabricio. Thank you for this invitation for my IBA Live. It's a pleasure
Yeah,
to join you.
we're so excited.
Thank
Now,
you.
Hugo, maybe share a little bit about yourself and also tell us about this forum that you've created.
So 10 years ago, it makes 10 years this year, and I got this idea. I could not travel around the world all the time, and especially how costly that was for me by that time. And so after a lot of the trainings we got, a lot of good connections and conversations, say, hey, why don't we do a conference right here? And what I aim it was to listen. I was not aiming to talk at the conference at all.
Mhm.
And that was my biggest goal. I was the first person on the first row of the conference and start talking with Jeff Sutherland and other entities like IIBA, and then other people I was meeting, like Peter Stevens, Thomas Friend, and Mari Moreira, Joanna Junco, and all of them start saying, hey, that would be a great idea. And here we go. We started, and since then, we already got almost 300 speakers. We already did so many hours. I already forgot how to count it of training and education. Also helping in good partnerships with the militaries, with the United Nations as well. So we did a lot of things. It has been a huge journey, but essentially, we have also other great events. But usually, it's to sell the good things that the companies build. Here, this conference is to meet the people who does those products and services.
Mhm.
right? And what techniques, which approaches, how do they do this? Where does it come, that culture? Where does it come, those drivers they have to generate so much innovation? And so we are really excited about every year we bring more companies to explain who are these people that build such amazing things for their users.
Mhm.
So this is was the initial idea, and the idea starts evolving from a small conference for 80 people, gets to 350, and now it's with online, it's kind of half half. But we keep the focus to have majority is middle and senior management. That's essentially people that are, they need to take decisions, and they have a lot of accountability and responsibility inside of the companies. So sometimes there is not much time to read more books and to take more of this, take more of that, go to another 2 days training or 4 days training. So coming here, sometimes it represents, I don't know, 3 months of self-study, 6 months of going to college or something like that, and they have everything right there. The speakers. It's a conference that we organize around the speakers, so they can sit at the table with the speakers. Everything, it makes easier for them to reach and connect. So Fabricio is an amazing speaker. He have been here last year, and so many connections and so many things, so much joy we had last year about so many topics we brought on the table, and other things we, well, sometimes we think nobody cares anymore, and perhaps right now it's on in the agenda. So we come up with that, and so this was more or less the evolutionary way to get to the conference we had these days. And of course, um, young people like Gonçalo that start coming to the conference, it was new for him. He started on a conference. It was his first conference. And he says, wow, this was kind of, but I will hand over to Gonçalo. How was your first
No,
conference?
yeah, it was back in 2020.
Asks and things like that.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it was the first time meeting Hugo. It was back in 2020. I think it was during COVID times and so on. As Hugo mentioned, it was a bit of a weird thing because I was trying to sell. Hey, I'm Gonçalo. We met a couple times online, but the masks were on, and so. How do I do that? And so, yeah, it's been amazing journey since then. Happy to engage with different speakers, Steve Denning, Chet Hendrickson, and lots of different ones as well. Every year I feel like I learn something new, and that's the key message that I have for everyone. Also, you just remembered Ivar Jakobsen, for example, when he come to the stage, he mentioned that
Yep.
he shared that he spent like 15 years to create his own presentation. So I was like, that's way more than just 3 months that you just mentioned. So basically, that's lots of knowledge there to share for everyone.
Wow. This
There,
sounds like an amazing conference.
there's a point that I saw in the last edition, and I believe it's a change that you're bringing to this conference, which I think is very interesting. Is that as it's called agility as agility an agility forum, it's not very focused on methods, but it's more focused on human factors. At least that's how I saw it last year, and I see that maybe it's an idea that you are proposing very precisely to focus on that. What's the connection between human factors and business success? How do you see that?
Who wants to
Well, I
answer?
can start. I can start
Yeah.
by saying that the connection between the conference and human factors started with, I guess, but Hugo can advise on that. With the creation of the Agile Human Factors, they kind of focus only on how does the human interactions um, connect every part of the organization and help to create value. Different aspects such as the non-technical skills, the human factors in itself, and as also the other components, meaning that, for example, complexity and system thinking, that we have a couple of speakers as well during these years. But yeah, it's if you see it, human connections are really the connection between the people, so the individual, the group, and afterwards the team, because it starts with the group, and afterwards the connections between the contacts. So basically the internal aspect and the external aspect as well, and those three are vital to the business results and to get the most of it. Hugo, I don't know if you have anything to add, but basically that's a sort of somewhat a simple definition, basically just for everyone to get like the baseline of what that means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hugo, did you want to add to that?
Um, Look, we did so in our conference we did several prototypes, and that's what we also everybody like to be agile these days, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we also, by the way, we also, even if we can do a lot of good things, but sometimes also the bad things. And that's how we learn. So in Fabricio, one of the things that we also talk about many times is when people look at them at the companies and they see, what were you doing in 2020, 21st, and 22nd, and 23rd? And it seems, well, I worked to grow the results. So we did a billion, now we did 1.2 billion, now we do 1.6 billion. But how much did you grow? And that's usually the biggest question. How much did you grow? And how much the team you work with grow? And most of the people don't have answers for that. So over the years, we understood the relevance of having better practices for different contexts. So the practice we know, uh, all of them are good practices in certain contexts. The thing is, the world changed more than we could perceive or could have overseen that will be that change. We could not evaluate how much, because it's unpredictable, the things that just happened over the last 5 years, and perhaps even more things to come that we'd never expect they would happen, but they happen. And that forces us to have different contexts. So for different contexts, we need different practices. Thinking on that, when we consider that we are always teaching practices and new practices and more practices, but do they fit to the context?
Mm-hmm.
Some it fits, and it could be a coincidence or not, and people get great results and they are happy. But what we understood, and we brought this also from the militaries, from the briefing and the debriefing, the art of war in aviation, and Colonel John Boyd, one of the inspirations as well about his work for Jeff Sutherland, the creator or the co-creator of Scrum, but also for many other things that we have used in Boyd OODA loop, it was essentially how to understand the human elements. And that's what triggered us. And we said, look, let's do a conference. Let's talk with the militaries. Let's talk with the lessons learned from the militaries. And let's think about, should we teach frameworks first and then expect different results? Or we should we teach human factors first? And then with that, when they understand the context, then they choose the practice. And then we observe the results. And that was the best thing we did, because that brought growth that we never seen before. I use this approach companies we work with, and 6 weeks we got 300% more outcomes than before. 300%. In some cases, after 6 months, depending, of course, of the context, the people, several variables, we got 3,000% more than before when they were working, before they start working with us.
Yeah.
So it was really a huge discovery for us, perhaps not for many people. But for us, it was a great discovery that when we teach human factors first, and then we apply the practice that fits their context, it's huge.
Yeah. As you're talking about this, what I'm seeing is the thing that connects the practice and the context are the behaviors. That's
Mhm.
really what you're saying, which is why that human behavior first approach to training actually sets the stage for behaviors that can offer you results. So maybe can you give us some examples of key behaviors that impact business results?
Of course, look, a lot of people consider that they are helping each other at the company because I said something and somebody reply or somebody says yes, I will help. But that doesn't mean good communication. That doesn't mean people are really helping each other's. Of course, helping each other's, like sharing in cleanup, maximize efficiency and happiness. We can see that thing very easily. It's very linear to see that good collaboration will bring much more benefits. It's like if people at school, when we are kids, they teach us that this is my pencil, this is my thing, it's mine. But when we go to companies, they say, no, you should share. You should share with your colleagues. You should share. But people don't know how to do that because
Hmm.
they are not being taught from the school to share what they have with the fear of get lost or get damaged or something else. So, and that's how most of the things starts at school when people start blaming, and that's what happens also at the companies. Not sharing the resources like the pencils, whatever it is, files, discoveries, better ways, things that stop them to deliver better work. That leads usually to very incomplete tasks and generally discontent among the team members or the group of people that are working together. And one of the examples of that is people start blaming poor teamwork or stubbornness, which is basically like blaming traffic jams on cars and not how they are driven.
Hmm.
So this is kind of a good example on how these counterproductive behaviors in business can affect the productivity, but also by helping each others, it's it, it's the key for them to have a good understanding. But for that, creating that good understanding, we need to create the same mental model. And a lot of us sometimes we see on the rabbit hole that when we say, oh, I was thinking, yes, that's a good thing, but with who did you share what you were thinking? With no one. So how can I could help or I could be part of that if you never shared? You see, so that miscommunication, it's critical to have business success. And today this is huge in most of the companies because of the hierarchies, the way we write emails. A lot of companies are email driven, email oriented, process oriented. If this process is not well designed, so usually these are the things that really affect the business. It's the way that people implement their behaviors or adopt their own behaviors at the company, thinking in the individual and not in the big picture, but also more focus on the local picture. And of course, those behaviors will be not a supportive of a success.
Hmm.
So perhaps a good question would be as well how to develop beneficial behaviors. And I always like to think like General McChrystal, it's like tending a garden. Cultivating good behaviors means requires a regular care and attention of their gardens. And if people neglect the leads of poor development or uncontrolled growth, it's like a wild, unkept garden. Um, that means usually the weeds will take over that garden.
Oh, I like that analogy. Yeah,
That's a powerful one.
it
There's
is.
something that I like very much when you say about organizations just following some practices and not taking in care the context of those practices. That relates very much with some research that IIBA have made before, called being nimble. And one of the ideas here in what they're measuring is that some organizations just invested in agile practices, but they're not becoming any more agile. So as this is kind of fuzzy, complex word, you're doing agile, but you're not agile. We're doing agile. You're using a set of practice, but you're not nimble in the terms of the OODA loop that you mentioned. You're not being able to sense and respond to change fast and precisely. And then you bring behaviors are behind it. Behavior should support this way of sensing and responding to change quickly and in a good way. I have seen that business analysts develop this kind of behavior by the practice of business analysis practices very often. So if you learn how to use business analysis practice, it pushes you to think wider, to think in the big picture, not just in your silo. It moves you to engage other people in this connection. So that idea of sharing, so it changes the behavior of how you deal with stuff. So yeah, I have to promote business analysis because that's what we're doing here.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, but I would like from you, how do you see that organizations can develop those good behaviors that you mentioned that would foster this nimble way of managing?
Look, Fabricio, if we take BABOK, right, the business analysis body of knowledge, if we just take that, if I recall, it was in the beginning, page 20, page 30. I'm not sure exactly, but if you just look to the requirements and design cycle, it's very simple to be written on a page, which means business requirements. Why do I want it? Stakeholders requirement. What are the needs? The solution requirements, what do I want? And the transition requirements, what are the conditions? It's huge to take all that information. It's very easy to understand the cycle, but it's huge to capture that information. But that's not all. In most of, and let's focus right now, of course, in business analysis, even for the perspectives we have, but the core concept is basically also focused when we have these plans. Plan the business analysis approach, plan the stakeholder engagement, planning is crucial. But you know how people does it, right? I sit in my computer at my desk, open my PowerPoint or Microsoft Word. I write everything. I say someone to review it and says, well, it's well written. I like it. I understand. Done. But that doesn't mean a business will succeed. You'll make better numbers. And I'm talking about the numbers because usually that's most tangible. But more than the numbers is the outcomes, are our customers loving our brand? Right? Would they sleep overnight at our door to buy our next product? Would they feel the same emotion, vibes, and interest in what we do? It's a positive feedback, or it's always kind of, it depends. Or we are one of those companies, even following all these life cycles, by the end of the day, we just go on the market at Apple Store, Google Store, whatever. And usually what we say is bug fixing. The next release was about bug fixing, and it's about bug fixing. And most of the reasons, it's always about bug fixing. So all these cycles that we need to design and collect all these data, usually it seems they are forgotten. We are forgetting them because we are not captured the right attention, right? And so this is very critical, applying the right practice to the right context. It's the context that defines the practice and not the other way around. But even for a certain context, there are certain behaviors. And this is really critical. And I think Gonçalo have some numbers about the human errors in project management, in aviation. It's huge about how people misunderstanding the numbers, or they just blame someone. At the end, it's very easy to blame someone for something. But how we got there, how to study the error. I never seen much, except in certain business areas. Nobody studied the error. how we get what brought us here, why did it happen. Usually what they do is a protective system, which means let's build more processes, more procedures, let's more of this and more of that, let's constrain more and more and more constraints, so people one of these days will not think. They are
Yeah.
just constrained, so their behaviors will be fully limited, which means we are reducing people capability to think and to improve because of those huge constraints we implement, to be sure that people don't get out of those boundaries for any reason. And I think it should not be like that. It's quite the other way around. We need to create a behavioral management system for to be harmonious and productive.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. I listen, that point that you make about building processes and practices that constrain us, right? In organizations where we have bad behaviors, we often see processes that are over architected to constrain bad behaviors instead of dealing with the bad behaviors. But what we're talking about, oh, by the way, we are live. And so if you have questions, make sure that you put those in because you've got access to Hugo and Gonçalo, who are thinking about how behaviors impact businesses. But on that note, because I noticed, Gonçalo, you have researcher in your title. So there's science
Yeah.
behind what we're talking about here. And, maybe in some way, if we think about this, less it's warm and fuzzy, people should behave, nicely at work, right? That's a given. But there's actual research that you've done. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Just before doing that, just want to recall a couple of things. The numbers vary between different contexts and relation between how fast those contexts change and how are the interactions between people impacted by those ones. For example, the numbers in aviation around 60 to 80%. Well, for example, in oil and gas, since it's an industry that's a bit slower, are less, like around 35 to 40%. However, in terms of security and safe, those are huge. If you make one mistake, you are in big trouble. I want to recall a study in 2004 back to the Southeast Asian Airlines that who analyzed during a year 42% of the threats were poorly managed by the crew and the pilot's team during flights. And so that also resonates and interconnects the connection between operational performance and the cooperation, communication, and the whole aspects of different teamwork. It's true that, for example, when you work around performing a task or achieving a goal, it's a measurement of different areas, I would say. Basically, you have the technical skills, you have the non-technical skills. There are also two more that I want to highlight that impact the situation, which is the context of the organization, meaning, oh, but we always done this way, so basically that's how we do things around here, which has a massive impact as well. And also there's an amount of randomness along that you cannot control. Uh, Organizations are made with people. Uh, People can have bad days, so that's the little part that you cannot control. Um, when I say those things are basically a sleepless night or something that is bothering you in your personal life, in terms of your professional outcomes. But again, the number is high in terms of the human interaction, the behaviors, and how teams come to play, and those probably are way more powerful in when considering the non-technical aspect and the technical aspect. Because, for example, when you go to job interviews, you can understand how technical gifted are the people, but how those people are going to play a part in their current team or future group, I would say. those you can't measure with simply an interview, or even if you do group focus groups or something, somewhat of different activities. There's always something left to play there, you know. So again, the numbers are around 40 to 60% in average for the behaviors, for the people, how people communicate. And in those aspects, I want to highlight 5 just for people to understand in terms of how those go into play. Okay, so you have the communication, you have the cooperation and teamwork skills, you have the decision making and the way people manage the information available. You have situational awareness, basically how do you play, how does this is the team going to play a role in terms of the full picture, as also the work attitudes and also the leadership. And when I mean leadership, is not the highest paid person in the room, it's how you play a role in that moment to guide the team, because for example you have the more information available with you, or just be a good follower in terms of that person knows more than I do, I recognize that, so when he decides to make a decision, I'll be there for him or for her to support her and to make those goals come to life, I would say so.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talk very much about influencing that authority as business analysts, and so that's how leadership should
Yeah.
work. That's really interesting, and those kind of skills that you said are not very easy to identify in an interview are probably the most hard to teach. So if you get an employee who doesn't have the technical skills, it's easy to teach the technical skills and provide some concepts about how the work is done in your organization, but it's hard to manage how people behave in real situations. How do they communicate? How is it their leadership? How are they aware about the whole and take decisions, as you said? Interesting.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
the things I don't like about that term soft skills is that it somehow sounds easy and optional. And it is these are the most difficult things that we do, because when we come to work, we don't just like switch out our suit and put on the professional suit. We bring our whole selves to work, and we may behave certain ways in a professional setting that don't at all look like what we do or seem like outside of work. But there are things at work that can happen that can, as they say, trigger us, and we can, even if we interview well, we may not handle stress well, and so that can show up sometimes, and those are not things you can account for. I tell you what, why don't we actually have some great comments, by the way, going on today, and if you guys are okay, I would love to just maybe take a look at some of those comments and some of the questions. So let's see. I'm going to pull this first one in. This first one is from Miss Barbara Carcanord. Do you think that some people are more naturally agile than other people? I like to follow processes, so sometimes I'm less agile than I would like to be, she says. What do you guys think about that? Are there some that are just more naturally agile?
Well, before we go to the answer, if it is from Barbara and I have her books, I just want to say hi to her. It's an honor of having her here, which, which is huge. Thank you so much, Barbara. You should be here as well. Um, Look, definitely, agile sometimes we say that agile is not for people, right? Is for the way we drive our things. We need our time. Everybody needs their time. We need to understand people. We need to think positively. And of course, we always want it to be faster. And if that's basically the agile from the dictionary, everybody wants to be fast and better and all those things. And sometimes, and I think the beauty of agile and the word agile, and also quoting a little bit Darryl Rigby from his book Doing Agile Right, is the balance that agile brought to the business world. So between the industrial revolution and an unpredictable future, more chaotic or not, or we don't know what it comes and how we're going to behave, agile, the beauty of the word is to be in the middle, which means we can adapt, And that adaptability is we can adapt to the context. We can adapt with our team members to the things that are coming up and create more resiliency for all of us. And I think that's the beauty of the word agile. It's a balance. Of course, agile is also related to innovation, to the digital world, to all of that. But that balance, I think that's usually the beauty for me on this word. It's basically that. Um, Also, one of the topics I would like to bring is if we go to the underlying competencies on our BABOK, I think it's the nine or nine something, number nine. I don't recall so well.
You're
So,
good.
but
You're doing good on Babak. Nice shout outs.
9.4, if I don't forget, it's the communication skills.
Mhm.
And so for so many times, we want to be agile and we try to communicate. And then we have a leader that says, well, you lost me, you lost me, you lost me. Just give me bullet points, just give me bullet points. And we get stressed, we get anxiety, we don't know what to do right now, and we go down. And I think even if agile is for some reason is not achieving in business what we expect it to be achieving by these days, I think it brought a lot of good things to the world of work, which is psychological safety. People are talking, and we are also trying to be sure that the leaders should be managing and set clear working agreements. They should be managing the behaviors, setting clear working agreements, provide consistent feedback, and guide those behaviors. If they don't manage the right behaviors and give a good example in a team, it's like ignoring the rules of the road while driving, which means accidents become inevitable. And that's what happens to most of the companies. So we all want to be agile, but at some point, like Chet Hendrickson's like to say, everybody likes to go to heaven, but nobody likes to die. And sometimes that's the difficulty of applying agile even to ourselves.
Yeah. Yep. Well, let's see. So this next one is just a comment. But this morning you've got Angela Wick really thinking. So she is finding this conversation really great over a great cup of coffee, I'm sure. Framework first or context and human factors first. So I think that seems to be a concept that is really connecting for a number of our audience members today. Here is another thought. This is from Maria Yarley. The balance of a productive community with individual responsibility is tricky. What do you guys think about that? That's an interesting observation. Do you guys want to comment on productive community, individual responsibility?
Well, Gonçalo, I can open this with the teamwork, right? It's the team needs to
Yeah,
be
I was thinking about that. It's just a responsibility word that I'm because
Mm,
one thing is the accountability that people have for goals and outcomes, I would say.
yeah.
But the one it's the blaming part. Oh, you didn't do this. You know when you blame, you have those three fingers pointing at you. You know. So basically,
Right.
that could be a good point of that
Hmm.
part. But again, this goes back to the different components of those non-technical skills that I was just mentioning. For example, if you take communication, the biggest mistake is for someone who just talked or said something to think, yeah, I just communicated, so that's good. And other people might not be understanding. For example, there might be, if they are on a Zoom or Teams call, connection mistakes or something like that. So it also impacts that part as well. That's the external environment playing its role. but yeah, that's the true power of being a team and not just being a group, because in that way, if you are really a team, you are working for the same stuff and not just your personal goals or personal checklist goals, but for sure, um, it impacts everything.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, I was writing down because I think this just occurred to me in what you said. So there's the action of communication. We often pride ourselves on, oh, I'm a good communicator, right? I send emails, I talk to people. That's an action. The behavior
Mhm.
is creating understanding, which is a little bit different from just communicating because that's the action of whatever, writing on a paper or whatever. Creating understanding is actually the behavior that will get you to really a common understand or to effective communication.
And
All
there's a
right.
commitment to outcomes that Hugo mentioned before, and I think it's
Yeah,
it's a key differentiator in this responsibility versus accountability idea. We all here speak Portuguese except for you, Susan, and we
that's
don't
true.
have a translation for the word accountability that you have in English. That's a very good word. In Portuguese, we just have responsibility for both
Oh,
meanings, and
okay.
and that's a gap for us. So when we learn English and we learn the meaning of accountability, that's a very powerful word. So if I'm not just communication and I'm responsible to do the communication or responsible to do my tasks, and I'm accountable for the outcome of my tasks, that change completely the behavior of someone.
Yeah.
People becomes really accountable or change the way they are doing their tests, just not following practices or following a method, but they are really engaged in the outcome. That changes everything.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Thank you. Let's see. Maybe there's a couple more. Gosh, there's a couple of more questions. I know we're going a little bit over today, but honestly, you're getting some fantastic communications in there. I'm sorry, some chats. That's what I'm trying to say as I'm looking here. Barb wanted to follow that up with retrospectives are the most valuable practice because I think if I were to put put on this cap, maybe where Barb's coming from, it's our opportunity to reflect maybe on the behaviors, on the actions and the behaviors.
And
Um,
adjust.
yeah, and
Mhm.
to adjust in the future. So I think that's great.
One
Here's a
thing, if I can follow up on that, I
yeah.
found a study, I think it was 2 weeks ago or something, that connected the 60% of improvement in terms of leadership factors. So that's the accountability, that's the, hold on, let me try to put that just my okay. So basically that's basically the accountability factor. That's also the capability of being resilient in terms of getting the goals done, and aligned to that, that's the focus, and also that's the respect and consent. So basically those types of aspects improved in order of the 60% in a study. It was back in 2021 that was done. And again, yeah, it's one of the most powerful uh, tools, I would say, or techniques that you can do. And following that up, I find really upset when people say, "Yeah, we don't do retrospectives." Well, there could be lots of improvement rooms right there.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it gives us retrospectives give us permission to reflect on a number of things in ways that other kinds of activities don't.
Yeah.
So,
And look,
um,
today a lot of people do retrospectives around games.
mhm.
That's good at a certain level, certain point. Diana Larson and Esther Derby are good friends. They did a great book about retrospectives and about. But in our conference, we invited the Portuguese Air Force fighter pilots because they are masters dominating that. And why does it happen? Well, I was a Marine, and one of the things we know is this: planning is where we spend most of the time. Execution It's just sometimes a couple of minutes, a couple of hours. Debriefing, it's huge. It takes also, it's the second most time consumption we have. And it needs to happen. Now let's do the parallel, the analogy with companies, with businesses. Planning, well, nobody cares, but someone will do it. Usually do it by one person. Not strong planning. The execution becomes flawless, and the debriefing most of the times doesn't even happen. And the debriefing, a lot of people, and especially when it comes to agile practices, they always talk about what went wrong, what went well, what we can do for better. Well, I'm not sure if that's the right questions. For example, let's go to Babok as well. In Babok, and I'm sure that one is 8.5, which is basically increased solution value. It should be easy and simple. Bad planning, bad retrospective. Why? Because in the retrospective, you will say, what just happened? Because everybody remembers what just happened. What have we done right now? What was the execution? But let's go backward and think about what was supposed to happen. What are the deltas between those two?
Mm-hmm.
And this is easy, it seems a simple and easy exercise that will increase solution value. But the question is why people don't do it, or even don't do it properly, or they do games around it. They are losing the opportunity. So sometimes the retrospective is weak because the planning was weak. So basically, a retrospective is also a planning meeting, because from the retrospective, and Lisa Atkins like to call it lessons learned with a purpose, that will be the retroaction to go to the next planning. And again and again. And usually, even on those meetings, people don't reflect on their behaviors. So today, for example, what we usually do is what I did well, what we did well in the positive way. And then what I can do better only depends on me. I can control what I want to be. I can't control what I will do. And then my recommendation for what we should do to improve. And if they take, and usually I takes 3 options at least. Take an action point. Sometimes not an action point, it's a decision point. This we do, that we don't do anymore. And sometimes we are not even sure, and that's okay. There was not a trigger on that meeting that make us a decision or an action point. So we could call a learning point. Well, I don't know yet what to decide or what to do, but at least we learned this. And even to capture 1 of 3 or even the 3, people get frustrated or bored. Sometimes this is when we talk about behaviors, is this. Changing behaviors is hard because human brain consumes a lot of energy. Changing that status, it's going to consume more energy. So people will refuse to consume more energy to do that change. So today when we talk about change, and that's why sometimes when we talk about change management, everybody have good examples, bad examples, but usually this is what we learn. And even Gonçalo got a lot of research that he brought to our tools that we are been developing over the last years, and even to the conference that we're going to have by the end of this month, which is we need to find ways to teach people inside of their routines without forcing them to spend more energy, because they will resist with all they can. We need to find ways not to be the most clever people in the room with a big, powerful question, make everybody. It's just finding ways to start doing that small change from the inside out, like in the movie, that will make them to introduce those changes, small changes in their routines. And that would be like baby steps. But when you look backward, 3-4 weeks afterwards, when you look back, you say, I'm much better but that's a path that each of us need to think they want to pursue. And that's what, when we brought this, when we called about the agile practices, and when we talk about communication, that's the big deal with the roles and the accountability and the empowerment in the companies. If we don't have this, it will be really hard for people to start changing the behaviors. And that's where they should start. First, get the right behaviors, get the right communication skills, get the right teamwork. Be sure that we are not at the, all of us are not at the same level, but be sure that everybody can read the situational awareness. And if we can do this, at least a little bit of this, we get a little bit better. Then we look to our context. We might not need all the practice. We might choose which practice we can apply with what we can do today, and then we can do an evolution of that and not a revolution. And growing all together, it's critical to develop better cognitive skills, human skills, these non-technical skills, aside the ones that people bring and they want to show to everybody their technical skills, how good they are in doing something, but then they fail with the non-technical skills. And that's today the focus. And this is not something that you can promise to any company or to anyone. This will be done by Christmas, because as we all know, all projects must be done by Christmas.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah.
One thing that I would like, Hugo, you remember the story about the titles of the military regarding the, I don't know the word, because I see a couple of comments here regarding the behavior that and the posture of people that have to have in retrospective sessions. You just mentioned that story because it might highlight a couple of for the folks that are listening.
Yeah, when we in the militaries, when we go to the debriefing, all our position in the hierarchy, we strap all off, we put it on the board outside of the room, and when we get in, we are just us.
Yeah.
The humans. We don't bring any patent that will say you are the commanding officer, you are this, you are that. So we are just the human beings there. And that also, thank you, Gonçalo, for reminding me that, because there is a great book which is Leading with Vulnerability, and that's huge. Because when we go there, before someone says something about me, I have the option to go first and to get clean and says, guys, today I was not, you were good, I was not good. Right? And practicing that radical candor, showing, and today it's hard for people used to this at work. Use the word love at work. Oh, what is it? But
Yeah.
it's true. If we don't love to work with the people we were working with, if we don't have that joy, it will not be positive. It will always be below average, low performers. There is no other way, unfortunately. But when we love to work with that people, when we have that joy, we might not have the skills, but we can develop the technical skills. We can. And today the world is full of people all over the world. We can just reach, and they can stop for 2 weeks or something, and online, it's easy. But the non-technical skills, it's not something that you can teach easily, in the sense that you need to want to accept that teaching. Is not something that you'll see the result later today or by tomorrow, or it's a number that you're going to achieve. And so taking that stripes out of us and get there just as vulnerable, that's what show of what leaders are we build together in that group. And by the way, all of us need to be leaders. It's not just some of them be quiet and the others talk. Everybody should talk. Everybody needs to express themselves. So, and sometimes we hear in a lot of companies, oh, I don't like to talk, or I don't like, oh, I'm shy. People, it's really hard for people to understand that growing, evolving, it's a good thing. And for some people, it seems it's a good thing staying in their corner. Of course, we cannot force anyone to be what we want them to be. But when we want to build teams, to build sustainable business with great products, great services that everybody will buy from us, and people don't feel harmless or fear, are they going to take my money? Are going to use that against me? Are going to sue me? Am I going to lose my product and my benefits? People are, it's always about fear that companies, they find bureaucracy a good way to build fear on people.
Hmm.
And that's what these teams and these behaviors will stop, is these bad processes, and kill that fear at the born before it goes to their users or their consumers. Because it's okay to talk, it's okay to understand, it's okay to learn, and sometimes it's okay not being okay. It happens, right? But
Yeah.
people are not used to this vocabulary. People are not used to this. It's always about, um, this is the framework for everybody. Everybody will use this. All the teams will
Right.
be alike. Everything for forever. Prescriptive. It's kind of, it's hard for us when we start understanding and reading and researching, and we now we talk so much about the human beings, and agile is more human. And it was basically all the things that we listen. It's not about input output, it's about what you want, what is the problem, who has the problem. And that was basically the essence of all this community. It was to go around people and do the right question about what is the problem and who has the problem, and let's get together and start practicing a little bit to see if we get somewhere. And I think that was a little bit what we discovered on that. And those behaviors we need to start bringing to the workplace in a different way that they are being brought today, which is by forcing people to do frameworks. They don't even, sometimes they are not ready for that,
Right.
they don't understand them, but it seems they need to be running, to daily stand-ups. Why don't we sit? Why we need to be in stand-up? What is the problem, stand-up or seated? And other things that we might not even understand.
So I think for those in our audience that are watching today, I think you are getting a sense of what makes this particular forum a really fascinating one, because you're going to get into some deep conversations. You've got some speakers, many speakers who are really giving you a different perspective on agility that is more that is not about the practices. So here, I'm going to also put this back up. If you want to find out more about the World Management Agility Forum, that's the website. And I think we're talking about maybe some things that you're going to share with us that we can share with our audience, who might want to get more more, learn more about this particular topic. Well, let me tell you, we have had a fantastic conversation today. We have gone a bit over, but I think our audience has really enjoyed this. So, Hugo, Gonzalo, I want to thank you both for joining us today. This has been an amazing conversation.
I've learned a lot.
I
Yes.
know I have, as usual, I have a page full of notes, things that I'm thinking of here. And so, Fabricio, you'll be joining them in Lisbon, um, and will be on the stage to share your thoughts about being nimble. So I want,
Looking forward to that, and have some behaviors happening and sharing these behaviors during the conference. That's what I expect.
yeah.
Of course, and you cannot forget the pastry, right, Fabricio, and the wine and the good food. You don't come to
Also, yeah, also good times. All
the
right.
conference, right? We go to nice places as well. So I hope you can, anyone here joining us also can join here in Lisbon. We would love to have you here as well. Fabricio and I, with Gonçalo, would love to have you. So please, if anyone is there, we can continue these conversations offline, LinkedIn or whatever. Please join, chat. We can continue these conversations. And by the way, someone said about the book Atomic Habits. Perfect. That's exactly also the one of the recommended books as well. Thank you so much for
Fantastic.
having us.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so we're going to wrap up for today, but before we go, there's one thing that I just wanted to let you know about. We are currently running a chance to win some tickets, actually, for our Festival of Business Analysis. You guys will remember we had some of the organizers and speakers on from the Festival of Business Analysis. Yes, that takes place in Australia, but there is a virtual part of that conference, and you can win a couple of tickets to join that. So that's pretty cool. We will pop the link for that raffle into the chat. So, coming up next time, what are we going to talk about? How to elicit requirements. We're actually going to do a bit of a crossover episode with some folks from the JDE connection, and we are going to talk about eliciting requirements for commercial off the shelf products. So, we thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Fabricio, for being my first guest co host. I really
It was
appreciate
a
it. Great
great
conversation.
honor and a great pleasure, Susan. It's always nice to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I bet next time we should dance.
We should. We should show everybody the dance because I don't think we've ever done that here. So
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in the calendar. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. Remember, we're going to talk about how to elicit requirements, and we will see you here. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.